All right, guys, so what we have here, we have a TP75 parallel extruder. This extruder runs all the Celect line of products that we have, currently running the 7-inch. So what we do here in Bristol, we actually compound our own powder in the back of the plant, in our blend plant, which is very, very important. We're able to, through the summer and the winter, take samples from that compounding area, run that in on a lab extruder, do anything from bulk density checks, moisture in the resin, different things like that, so we can be dialed in through the different months, different seasons of the year to make sure we have a good consistent powder going in the machine. So once we're in the machine, we add what we call a chemical blowing agent. That's what creates the foam, or the cellular, reference term to cellular PVC. When it goes through the machine's kind of working it up, kneading the material up. By adding the blowing agent, when it comes to the end of the die here, it's under immense pressure. So if I was to move this calibration table back, this part would swell up like a football. So what we do is we run this tank right up against the exit of the die when the material comes out, and we trap that to keep that from happening. These calibration systems are cooled to about 55 to 60 degrees. They set the skin to the part and help the part start to make its shape. The inside of the part still, however, is very warm. So if you can picture a sponge, once it enters our downstream tank here, the cells of the part are opened up and they're very, very warm, and we don't want to let those collapse. So once they enter in here, we have 30 foot of spray. This chilled water, again, like 55 to 58 degrees. You can see the condensation coming off the tank. The most important thing of cellular PVC in the downstream process is vacuum on the part. So if you look right here, you can almost hear the vacuum on the tank. So going back to those cells, when the part comes into the tank, they're opened up. If we don't have that vacuum on them, because they're still hot, they'll want to relax again. Your part will kind of fall down on itself. So we run the vacuum. The vacuum kind of holds that part open and says, hey, we're not letting you close. We're going to keep that cell open. As we continue to hit it with water all the way through that 30 feet, so once we leave the end of it, we're set up nice and good. Once we leave the tank here, the part's fully set up, nice and hard, but we haven't applied the embossing yet. So what we do is we come through here, which is kind of a pre-sanding station. This basically just removes any moisture or any debris that might have got on the part during the extrusion process, mainly to help the paint bite into the part whenever they take it and paint it up. So here the part's kind of semi-etched, and because it is cellular PVC, it's very easy to work with when you apply heat to it. So basically what we have here is a set of small heater guns. We apply a little bit of heat to the surface just before going into this machine here. This machine here has a cold roll on it. There's no heat applied to it at all. Everything's done with heaters directly on the part. Once it goes through the embossing machine, that will engage that wood grain pattern into the cellular profile. And then the final product when you get out is a wood grain embossed PVC siding profile. The nail slaughter is basically a clamshells type nail slaughter that basically just falls down the part, and that's where you get your nail slots to hang the siding on the wall. For date tracking, so we know in extrusion when we make the parts, as well as when we paint the parts, we have a date code machine that puts anything from the time of day that it was made, the operator who ran it, the shift that ran it, and things like that. This piece of equipment here is called our haul off, or our puller. It's what pulls the strand all the way down the line, and that's what we focus on in terms of line speed. This has to be synchronized with the machine in the back to make the profile correctly right. And the very last thing is the cutoff saw. The cutoff saw is what's putting the patented groove in the part. It's actually servo driven. So what we have is we have a groover on top, and we have a groover on the bottom with a main cutting blade that cuts the part in half and severs. That's what gives you the top and bottom route in the Celect siding. All right, so what you're viewing now is the operator. When samples come off the line, the operator checks a lot of different dimensions. He's checking the nail hem width, the thickness, the nail slot placement to make sure it's centered. He's checking the overall surface of the part to make sure the thickness is within spec. And we always check 2 parts back to back to make sure that when the seams line up together that there will be no step in the parts themselves. And then lastly, we'll place those 2 panels together and we'll feel for any step in the part. If there is a step in the part, we'll make the correct adjustments until we get it seamless. We check both sides.
My name's Dan Edgeworth. I'm the paint supervisor here in the Celect painting area. We have 2 ovens here, both of them laid out in an L-shaped pattern. We load the parts on this flat bed, and it passes through to the paint booth. We send the panels through the paint booth at about 150 meters per minute. We use from 3 to 5 guns, depending on the product we're painting, to get proper coverage. It transfers to the oven after going through the paint booth. It sees some IR lamps at the beginning of the process. This helps gets the boiling of the water off the product. This is a water-based paint that we're using, so we try to get as much water off underneath these IR lamps as we can. At that point, it passes on through the heat and convection part of our oven. It sees temperatures between 145 and 150 degrees Fahrenheit. The belts move along at about 6 feet per minute. Makes for about a 10-minute trip through the oven. At this point, it's fairly cured. It has a dry cooling down period at the end of the line, and at that point we pack it in the box. Our rate currently, we do about 16 squares an hour, and that's finished product into the box, packed out the door.